So I welcome everyone for coming today. My name's Rebecca Arvizu. I'm going to be facilitating today. So I want to, again, welcome everybody to this forum. It's titled Yes on Prop 6. We're going to learn about ending slavery. But before we go to our speaker, I want to remind everyone that on the email invite that you got for this program, there are several ways to donate. And there are some links there to show you some of the past programs that we have done. And, we hope that you will donate and help us keep this programming going. And there's also, I believe, Rick, on that email, some links for some activations and calls to action that you can do to promote our mission, to reach and sustain peace. So with that, I will ask Rick if you can tell us a little bit about the forum next week with Steve, or maybe Steve wants to talk about the forum next week.
Sure. I'll let Stephen talk about his forum first, but what I wanted to mention is in the invite you got for today, if you scroll down, you'll see some information that ICUJP started 23 years ago, as of a couple of weeks ago, after September 11th, when people, including someone who is usually comes on these calls, Chris Panett, and a few other people like Reverend George Regas, Reverend Jim Lawson, Dr. Maher Hatut, Rabbi Leonard Bierman, and many other people came together because they understood that they needed to speak out against the violence that was being perpetrated in our name. And when you have a mission statement that religious communities must stop blessing war and violence, it's not equivocal. It's an admonition. It stops being a bumper sticker and becomes something that you need to be able to espouse in order to bring into fruition. So that's what we've been doing for 23 years in various guises. Every year we have a protest against the incarceration in Guantanamo that is still happening. And it seems like our mission every year is to let people know, no, you're not, you don't understand. It is still happening. There are people still there. We let people know that there are things that you can do for the unhoused and your community can do for the unhoused. And all you have to do is push on it. So that's what we've been trying to do for 23 years, is let people know that they are empowered, that they are not alone. And with your support, we can do that. There's some ways to donate on that email blast that you got. You can either go on our website, and you can even do a monthly donation that way. There's an Eventbrite link where you can do it on Google Wallet, Apple Wallet, PayPal, and I don't think they take NFTs, but that's good because they're worthless. But you can do a lot of things to help support us. So next week, our speaker is going to be a gentleman named Stephen Fisk. I don't know too much about him. But Steve, if you'd like to talk about it a little bit.
Well, briefly. Basically, we've been living a predatorial paradigm for millennia, which has been the mindset of the human psyche of conquering and oppressing, and of racist militarism for centuries, environmental destructionism. And this is what we need to overcome. So I'll be addressing this in quite a bit of detail, I hope. and taking a good look. It's kind of an overview picture of where we're at this time, where we're pressed up against the existential precipice.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So are there any ICUJP reports?
The only thing I want to report is on that email that you saw, we did a collage of a few of the pictures that we took from various points over the year, including the event that we had at Holman United Methodist Church. They were very nice to sponsor us and have us over there. And so you can get a good idea of what we've done. I'm slowly but surely getting back into updating our YouTube links and our YouTube videos, so you'll be able to see more of those. You'll be able to see the one from last week about Todd Boss and Poetry for Healing and neurodiverse work that he's been doing and a few other people have been doing. Ipyani, I know you, I saw some of your poetry, so you might want to take a look at that. And there's another one with Mimi Kennedy that we did a couple weeks ago that's been edited and up there. By all means, take a look at that and get familiar with what we do if you'd like.
So let's go on to our speaker today. We are running a few minutes behind anyway. I will need to leave at 9:20. So Rick has offered to go ahead and the meeting facilitating wise. So I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Ipyani Lockert, who is the organizer for the Interfaith Movement of Human Integrity. And today he's going to be talking to us about Prop 6 and encouraging us to support this. This is a proposition to end slavery. Slavery does exist here in California. And I'm real excited to hear this talk because I have been following the reparations task force the last couple of years, and I actually helped organize and facilitate a panel with some of the task force members last year with American Constitution Society. So it gave me the opportunity to read their report and learn about the long history of slavery, and injustice towards Black people here in California. Even though it wasn't a slave state, it's still stained with slavery and the injustices. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ipyani Lockert.
Definitely. And as Rick pulls up the slideshow, I just want to say, first and foremost, thank you for inviting us, my organization, to the space to speak about Proposition 6. It's an issue that is, that many are unaware of throughout our state. As Miss Rebecca just said, there's stains of slavery throughout this entire nation, but many do not know about the stains that reside here in the golden state of California. So today I'll be speaking about yes on Prop 6, and we could go to the next slide. Yes, just to give you a little idea of who I am, I'm born and raised on the west side of San Bernardino, in the heart of the biggest county in the country, San Bernardino County. And I've had the pleasure of working for Interfaith Movement for Human Integrity for almost 2 years now. And it's been a wonderful experience. We really participate and try to practice collective liberation. And as you can see on the next slide, the regions that we kind of focus on and do a lot of our advocacy within. We are a statewide organization, and we work in the Bay Area, San Francisco, Oakland, Sacramento as well, then in the LA region, and then as well as the Inland Empire. So those are our three prime spaces where we do advocacy and work with coalitions and things of that nature to try to create a more just system for immigrant and asylum-seeking populations, as well as our directly impacted and systems impacted community members. On the next slide, you'll be able to see kind of who we are and how we go about um, the change that we do. And I would like to read our kind of like our mission statement. Interfaith Movement for Human Integrity is a multi-faith rooted organization working for the dignity and full inclusion of immigrants and people impacted by incarceration. We believe that every person is sacred across bars and borders. And as I say that statement, what comes to mind for me is we're in the midst of our statewide pilgrimage today. It started on the 25th, and it's going to each one of the 6 immigrant detention centers that are left here in the state of California, as well as visiting a few state facilities. I have the honor of orchestrating a solidarity visual later on today at Norco CRC. And earlier this morning, they'll be up there at Adelanto at the Immigrant Detention Center as well, highlighting some of the injustices that are still happening within our nation and state. On the next slide, you'll see how do we kind of go about our advocacy. We like to, well, let me say it like this. Our core strategies are 1, transforming leaders, transforming the narratives, and transforming the policies. And today we're here kind of doing the transforming the policies and transforming the narrative aspect. So we're checking those 2 boxes. And then hopefully this will touch you as leaders within our community. So hopefully we'll hit all 3 of the boxes by the end of the day. At least that's the hope, right? And so definitely. So next slide, please, Brother Rick. So once again, we're here to talk about yes on Proposition 6. And if we go to the next slide. Thank you, sir. Proposition 6 is basically would amend the state constitution to eliminate all forms of slavery and involuntary servitude within California, ensuring no person is subjected to such inhumane conditions regardless of their confinement circumstances. Prop 6 would prioritize rehabilitation over exploitation and increase opportunities for incarcerated people to work on themselves, which would lead to safer communities for all. And then as you see in the quote right here from Brother JV is what we call him. Prop 6 is about giving incarcerated people the autonomy to choose what rehabilitative path works best for them to suit their specific needs and interests. And in the end, we all win. That is such a powerful statement because when we think about yes on Prop 6 and to end slavery in California, many people are unaware that this practice is actually happening. And ending involuntary servitude is just another word for slavery. And people is utilized here in the state of California as punishment for crimes. So we have many people that are inside these state facilities that are being forced to work to do all kind of a number of jobs, a slew of jobs, and I'll go deeper into that once we get to that slide. But this is something that so many people are unaware of. And when you tell people, do you know that slavery is still being practiced within the state of California? Most people at first don't even take you seriously because it's almost unbelievable, right? We think prior to the COVID years, right? We think we made it past a lot of these atrocities, but sadly, many of these practices still exist within this nation. And then knowing the history of this nation that and I'll say it like this, I feel like America is still a land of opportunity, that if you have the gumption and you're willing to work hard, you can manifest. You still can manifest and create beautiful things that could not only impact your life, but it impact the life of humanity or humanity itself. So I think it's a beautiful place, and I'm blessed to be alive and to be here. But also, it does have its ills. As we know, this nation was built on exploitation. This nation was built on genocide. So there's things that are still happening in our world and in this nation that we can address, and we have an opportunity to do so in this upcoming election. Next slide, please. All right, and the history, a little bit of history about involuntary servitude / slavery. In 1949, California first constitution stated neither slave nor involuntary servitude, unless for the punishment of crimes, shall ever be tolerated in this state. And what I really want you to focus in on is California's first governor, Peter Hardman Burnett. He was a Tennessee-born slaveholder and decried that the colored races are by nature inferior to whites. 3 months later, the state awarded him a 10-year private prison entrepreneur lease enterprise lease to James Intel, promising him state-constructed prisons and unrestricted use of convicted labor. What's so key about this, and you'll see this theme throughout a few of the slides, is that there's a profit motive, and we live in a nation that's built on capitalism, and so things really haven't changed much in this country. We like to think that we are evolving, and we are growing, and we are learning more, we are expanding, and we're becoming more of a kinder and more empathetic nation, but yet the foundation of this nation and even of the incarceration system is not really built on rehabilitation and bettering individuals or giving them pathways to come back and return to society to be, better people. It's a profit motive that we constantly battle within this nation, and many, not just in the prison industrial complex, but throughout many of things. When you think about housing, when you think about access to mental health services, so often there's a cost component and cost barriers, and then ultimately money. People want to profit off of others' suffering and pain. If we could go to the next slide, please. Definitely on the next slide right here. This gentleman is the gentleman James Estelle, a slaveholder that called to order the state's first Democratic Party convention as the senator of the counties of Napa and Sedona. He rallied pro-slave support for California's own Fugitive Slave Act in 1952. And in 1951, the legislature awarded Mr. Intel with a 10-year private prison contract, San Quentin. So this is like the birther of San Quentin prison that's still utilized today and still alive and well in the state of California. Basically, San Quentin was conceived by an enterprising former slave owner who worked corruptly with the state legislature to cultivate another class of free labor, which convicts and many of whom were indigenous served time for minor offenses such as vagrancy. You look at vagrancy laws and what type of crimes that made it illegal, that kind of were criminalized. Let me say it like that way. To be poor, to be unemployed or homeless, or to be considered undesirable or suspicious. They often included things such as if you're loitering or if you're wandering around the community without a clear purpose. And what sticks out in my mind is with some of the legislation that our current governor, Governor Newsom, has just signed some things that are kind of trying to address homelessness, but to me, a bad approach where it's almost criminalizing homelessness, right? So that was happening in the 1850s, and it's currently happening today, where you might be on hard times and you're not able to provide for yourself, and so you're quote unquote poor. That's a reason to lock you up and force you to work. You might be unemployed, right? When I think about what comes to my mind right now is our elder population, people in their like 50s and 60s that will be returning to community, and they haven't paid into Social Security. They've been incarcerated. Many have worked on their rehabilitation, and many have learned many of skill sets that benefit and make the prisons run. But when they come out, will these skill sets be acknowledged? Will they have accreditation for being a master welder, even though they are welding things that we are utilizing and people depend on? But will they be able to enter into that workforce, So those people that are returning that are more senior population, what are they to do? They come out, they only get $200 worth of gate money, right? So if you spend one night in a hotel here in California, that's pretty much half the money gone right there. And then if you were to eat, how long could you eat for with $100? I think you might be able to go a week, 2 weeks, maybe three if you're really minimalist. Like you might buy, a bag of beans, some rice, but where do you cook this at, right? Where do you prepare your meal at, right? And it's almost like we're setting them up. We're telling them, all right, you served your time, you paid your quote unquote debt to society. We're returning you to the population with no resource, no means, no pathways to engage, to connect, and to provide for oneself. And then as soon as they get out, they have needs, they're unhoused, and oh no, oh you know what? You're unhoused, you're poor, you're unemployed. We're going to criminalize you and bring you right back into the system. So it's this vicious cycle that we are really here trying to address and battle here today with the passing of yes on Prop 6. Next slide, please. Right here is a powerful image from 1943, and it's basically the a picture of incarcerated individuals building the railroads, right? It's what I think of, and it doesn't have to do with this, but I was just had the honor of being in Washington, D.C. Earlier this week. And I had an opportunity to look at the White House and see the White House. And it's a beautiful building. And it's like you see these things on TV, and to be there in front of it, standing in front of the gates, it was all inspiring. I cannot lie, it was all inspiring. But what crossed my mind is like this is the house that slaves built. That same building was constructed through forced labor, through the exploitation that we had spoke about earlier, and that is happening still to this very day throughout our nation and specifically here in California. As you can see right here, the people are being forced to work on the railroad tracks. But the one part about this slide that really pops out to me that touched me, it says, lingering slave trafficking faded out in 1987, largely due to the decreasing population of indigenous people due to genocide. So it wasn't like we hit like we found our moral compass and we realized like this is wrong and we shouldn't do this. No, we killed everybody. We pretty much killed everybody that we were forcing to work. And sadly, you can find genocide happening throughout our world still, especially when you look at the continent of Africa. There's a few places where when you look at the Congo, it's conflicts that are happening where no matter how one may feel one side or the other, I pray that we all value human life because this is a gift that's we've all been blessed with, regardless of what deity we may pray to or faith that we ascribe to, what social economic level or political party we might associate with. This gift of life is irreplaceable, timeless, and priceless. And I feel if we as humanity, value ourselves, value one another, that we can be in a better place and we don't have to live in division. We don't have to live in hate. We can choose better for ourselves and for future generations. I might be naive in my thinking, but I like to think that I'm still working towards a utopia where each person is allowed to utilize their gifts and their talents, their skill sets, their blessings to be a blessing unto the world, to better humanity, to better our collective lived experiences, because this is a blessing to be alive this very day, this newly day given to all creations that live. Next slide, please. Thank you, sir. And I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier about the labor, but let me read this. California is one of 16 states that still allow legalized slavery in their state constitution. These constitutional provisions were added to the state constitution in their original form from the 1950s to the 1990s. You know, ending slavery in California is a human dignity, racial equality, and public safety issue that is long overdue. And how I was saying a little bit earlier about how people inside that are held and confined are learning these skill sets, right? You have people that learn how to operate press. You have people that are master welders. You have people that know how to work construction, have been taught and learn how to work construction equipment, right? So many of these things that our loved ones and family and community members are doing within the prisons help keep the prisons running, right? Without this forced labor, a lot of these prisons would not be able to function, right? Because they are exploiting them. When you go there to quote unquote serve your time, pay your debt to society, you hope, and when we think of CDCR, California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, the hope or the fallacy that many of us believe is that people are going to get better. But often we see the programming, the classes, the opportunities for one to better themselves, to enrich themselves, to cultivate a skill set. Those opportunities are often taken away, or they're forced to have to work, and they have to miss this class because they have to work. And if they don't work, they're penalized. And that's one thing people don't know as well. When people refuse, don't want to work, or say if they were injured on the job, but they're really in pain, but the supervisor says, "Oh, you still can work." If they don't work, that's held against them, right? And they could cause and lead to more time being added to their sentences. So this happens on a daily basis. And once again, learning these skill sets, and this is a side tangent for me personally, like we have to, for individuals that take the time to develop skill sets, we have to make sure those skill sets are recognized and they're able to utilize those same skill sets when they return to society. Because how is one will has a higher likelihood of recidivism if they're unable to provide for themselves. The main importance of developing skill sets is to provide a means for you to provide for yourself. And if we really prioritize rehabilitation and empowerment, we can ultimately build a better society. And then before we even get to incarceration, let's have these opportunities outside within our community and readily accessible for everyone. Next slide, please. Thank you, sir. And what you'll see here on the next slide is that, next slide, Brother Rick. Basically, ending slavery, right? So, Alabama, Colorado, Nebraska, Oregon, Tennessee, Utah, Vermont recently banned all forms of slavery in their state constitution, and it's time for California to catch up. Let me read this one more time. Alabama, Colorado, Nebraska, Oregon, Tennessee, Utah, Vermont. When you think about some of these southern states, right? The fact that they've already, where slavery was rooted hardcore, I mean, we're still fighting the remnants of such, we're fighting a heritage that some hold on to, and I understand the importance of each of our heritage and our lived experiences, but I hope that even in acknowledging that people can recognize and value one another, once again, to this gift that we're sharing today of life. But this is an opportunity for us here in California to catch up, to remove the vestiges of slavery from our California state constitution, making sure that we are recognizing the humanity of all, regardless of socioeconomic level or where one may reside or currently be at in this country. Life is a gift, and we need to remove all the stains of the past. And we have a wonderful opportunity by voting yes on Prop 6. Next slide, please. And I believe I see Brother Lawrence is in the building as well. So this slide right here, people should be able to choose whether to work or participate in education, job training, or self-help programs. Prop 6 prioritizes rehabilitation over exploitation and increases the opportunity for incarcerated people to work for themselves, which will reduce recidivism and will lead to safer communities. And this is a quote from Brother Lawrence, who should be joining us on this call a little bit later in a minute or two. When I wanted to take my on-site college courses to complete my degree, forced labor was prioritized over my rehabilitation. It's not called CDCR, right? It's called CDCR for rehabilitation, but they really prioritize forced labor. So we might need to change the name because they don't really focus on rehabilitation as much as they should, especially when it thinking about benefiting society. When you look at other nations, there's many of other models and nations that have a super low recidivism rate. That people, when they are in the system, they learn a skill set, and people are accepting them back to community. That seems to be an issue here in this nation, and there's many factors too. We're not going to go into it. Some of it is rooted in racism, some of it's rooted in a lot of things, right? But we must be open to receiving those that have paid their debt to society. And it's, to me, it's incumbent on each of us to make sure that every human being is successful and able to be on the path, the divine path that is laid upon for them to walk, and to encourage that of each of ourselves and one another. If we could go to the next slide, I'll have a short video that I would like to share. And in the interest of time, I'm gonna not share the second video, and I'll have Brother Lawrence come in and do his thing. So if you could hit play on that, please, Brother Rick.
The industry that we're going up against is a $1 billion industry.
If people can get with, your food could be produced by slave labor. The furniture that's in state buildings could be produced by slave labor. People picking up paper and refuge, it could be produced by slave labor.
The system makes so much money for them. How many millions of dollars are they saving or making from inmate labor?
Yeah, I made California prison industry a lot of money. A lot of money. 30 million in all. Now, I can't even afford to buy myself a suit.
And on top of that, a lot of the products, probably that Starbucks cup that you're drinking, probably had something to do with incarcerated labor at some point.
At a certain point, when do we get out the denial of the state of California as holding slaves?
And there's an entire backstory to that video. We're not going to go in depth into it, but the reason those images were being projected upon like the Sacramento State Capitol is that the organization was working, I believe, with Lamar, and they were going to run their media campaign, and then a day or two before it was set to run, they pulled it. They said they didn't want to do it. And you could kind of read through the lines of why, because it was a profit motive. They didn't want to alienate some of their biggest, advertisers, right? They didn't want to do anything that might hold them accountable for how they're producing their goods. If we could go to the next video, I do want to play the first minute or two of the next video, because it's coming from women that have been forced to work within our state facilities. So if you could play that, and then after the second speaker speaks, we could pause it right there, and then I'll bring in Brother Lawrence.
I had to go to prison, and I was a single parent, and I didn't have a high school diploma when I got to prison. So I was like, can I get my education? I want to go to school. I can't work for good time like everybody else. So they told me no. They told me I had to be 5 years closed custody because I had a life without parole sentence. So that meant I couldn't go to school. I couldn't get my high school diploma. I had to do hard labor. I had to mow lawns. I had to go through the trash and recycle, digging in big trash cans, and there was bloody stuff in there, and it was gross, but we had to do it. I could not refuse work because I would be penalized. So I lost my father at that time, and I was mourning my father. But the next day, after the news, after they told me my father passed away, I had to go to work. If I didn't go to work, I would be considered a program failure. I wasn't working for good time. I wasn't getting my high school diploma. I wasn't doing any of the things that I needed to do so I can set an example for my children. They told me if I didn't work, I would lose rights. I would not be able to visit my children. I would not be able to use the phone. I would have to stay in my room. I couldn't shop canteen. So it's involuntary servitude. There's people who were in there with me and they were very old, Miss Greenberger, and she had to work and she didn't have any medications for her arthritis and she didn't have anything that she needed and they didn't care. So this is what's happening in our prison systems and it has to stop.
I did everything from maintenance mechanic to yard maintenance to hair care to working in the print shop to working in different types of labor behind the gates when I was close custody. From the age of 17, I did hair care to yard crew to kitchen to outside yard crew, plant operations, stationary engineer, just any type of job that you could have to run a prison. That's pretty much where they would keep close custodies. Jobs are selected randomly based off of physical, much like in Nazi war camp, when we would be given a physical to determine what type of labor we can do safely. So if you pass a physical, you will 9 times out of 10 be placed in laborious jobs. Anything else you want to add? Just that anybody 8 to 80 can get it in the state of California. If you come into the state of California Department of Corrections, as long as you can pass that physical, you will be working in dangerous jobs. I had friends inside that are in their 60s working in dangerous jobs on the docks, moving carts that weigh 2,000 pounds that could easily crush an elderly woman. So I just want people to keep in mind that it isn't always people in optimal health like myself that are inside doing these jobs for decades without pay. It could be your mother or your grandmother or even your baby sister, because I was 17 when I went to prison.
Every time I see that video, it touches my heart and it saddens me as well that, especially when we think about, our senior population, and being forced to work, having not like it just saddens me. I just think that there's so many ways that we can reimagine our community. Currently, right now, here in the state of California, it costs over $130,000 per year to incarcerate a healthy individual. For someone who may have health issues, that number could literally almost double. And I say all that to say, like, imagine if we invested $130,000 into each person per year. What kind of community would we have? What opportunities would be there for people, right? I imagine it would be a beautiful opportunity where people will have a chance to pursue whatever dream or vision that each has been given, and without means or resources being a barrier. We can get to a place where we are investing in people like that, with that, by preventing incarceration in the first place, number one. But we also can remedy some of these ills by voting yes on Proposition 6. With that being said, Brother Lawrence, are you here, sir?
Yes, I am. Ipyani, I've been here.
Definitely. And let me introduce Brother Lawrence Cox. Brother Lawrence is one of the policy directors for LSPC, Legal Services for Prisoners with Children. His organization are the brain trust behind Proposition 6, and through their advocacy and reaching out with Assemblymember Wilson, who saw the need to address this issue of involuntary servitude / slavery, and being still practiced in California and trying to remove this, chose to author and support this bill. With that being said, I would like to introduce Brother Lawrence. He'll tell you a little more about himself, his role that he plays in our community, as well as his lived experience. Because as you guys see from one of the previous slides, that he was forced to work and had to make tough decisions while paying his debt back to society.
Thank you for that, Brother Ipyani. Good morning to everyone. As he said, my name is Lawrence Cox. I am the Regional Advocacy and Organizing Associate for Legal Services for Prisoners with Children. I coordinate our 8 active chapters throughout California of All of Us or None, which is a project of legal services for prisoners with children. All of Us or None is also a national organization. We have 8 other active chapters throughout the United States. We are a group or an organization made up of groups of formerly incarcerated individuals who do policy advocacy and community organizing throughout the communities. We stand to take those that have been formerly incarcerated and build leaders out their ranks so we can give back to our societies. We fight for the rights for those in our communities. We fight for the rights of those that are still incarcerated, and we fight for the rights of the families of those who are incarcerated. We believe in utilizing our own voices to impact the system. We believe in, fighting and securing racial and gender equality. Some of, just briefly, the very important laws that we have been influential in help changing, starting with Prop 17 here in California, which restored the right for individuals who were convicted of a felony, whether you're on parole or probation, restoring those rights to vote. One of the very first laws that we did pass when our organization first started 45 years ago was the Mother-Infant Care Program. We also ended the shackling of pregnant women while they were incarcerated as well. We've managed to change various policies that remove barriers to visiting. Visiting, we believe, is a key component to rehabilitation for those that are incarcerated. We've passed laws that mandated that individuals who are incarcerated and still had kids who were under 18, that they be placed in a facility that was nearest to their children and not a facility that could be anywhere from 300 to 400 and 500 miles away, which is imperative because when a person is estranged from society, they still have family and they still have kids. And the impact of kids who don't grow up with their parents in their lives is tremendous. And it shows in our communities, it shows in the behavior, and it shows in performance in school. We've been working on Prop 6 for 4 years. 4 years ago when it started, it was ACA 3. It did not make it through the legislative process. For the last 2 years, it's been ACAA. Our organization and our coalition, which is called ABC, which is Abolish Bondage Collectively, which is a group of 25, 30 other orgs who have been committed to doing the work and trying to make sure that we change our constitution and end what we all know is the last vestiges of slavery. Last 2 years for sure has been a struggle. It has been a fight. We still have so many who are so used and who are so just dedicated to maintaining the status quo of exploitation, over rehabilitation. But we finally made it through the legislation process this year, and here we are now on Prop 6. We're almost there at the finish line, but November is essential because any constitution amendment has to be voted on by the people. I have my own experience with being incarcerated. I was incarcerated 17 years before I started doing the work that I do now. I remember plenty of times when I had opportunities to partake in other rehabilitative programs that I truly needed. And every time, my jobs were always prioritized over my desire to work. And the way the jobs work in the carceral system, you have anywhere, well, when I was incarcerated, we were up to 132,000, something like that. Now we may be 92,000 incarcerated individuals. However, there are only enough jobs for under 40,000 individuals. So you're placed on the waiting list where there's no choice, but you're just thrown on the waiting list. And then when you sent to another prison, you're thrown on another waiting list. A lot of times these jobs pay you nothing. Or somewhere you might start 8 cents, work long enough, you can work up to 32 cents an hour, unless you make it to fire camp where you can, make $1 or something. But the whole time, the state is profiting off of you. California makes millions and millions a year off of the labor that they get from incarcerated individuals. It's exploitation. It's the greed and the desire for money. But that's dangerous for public safety, because when you incarcerate us and you don't allow us to rehabilitate ourselves, we come to the streets without being able to, assimilate with pro-social skills. Rehabilitation is key. 95% of individuals who are incarcerated will return to the streets one day. So we have to look at it as, how would we want people to return to our streets? Do we want people to be made whole? Do we want people to actually be rehabilitated? Or do we want people to come to our streets worse than they were when they went in, and continue to wreak havoc and degradation on our communities? I spent 17 years in some of the most barbarous environments, and you can come home worse. Being subjected to the things that you are subjected to while incarcerated, never mind being estranged from society, being estranged from your family, losing your complete autonomy and your freedom, but the ill that is brought against you when in that barbarous environment like that, whether it's from staff, whether it's from other incarcerated individuals around you, can cause serious mental health issues. It can cause a person to begin to commit crimes and while incarcerated, only to merely survive to save their own lives. When you don't have a system that prioritizes rehabilitation, it prevents an environment of stagnation and violence. And I've known this. I've been on level 4 yards and level 3 yards for the majority of my time. I've never seen a yard lower than a 3. So that's why working is so important. But I mean, rehabilitation is so important. I remember being incarcerated and being forced to work a job in the kitchen, a job that I would never do on the streets, a job that didn't benefit me or pay me anything. But I wanted to take, the first time I wanted to take a rehabilitative course, it was vocation. And I needed to start the introductory program to the vocation, so I could continue to go on to whether it would be plumbing or whether it be carpentry, etc. But they wouldn't remove me from the program. They told me that I had to get a write-up, and when you get a write-up, you lose time. You get a write-up, you lose time, and then you lose privileges, and they add time to your sentence. So it made no sense for me, for someone who wanted to program, to intentionally get in trouble just so I can receive rehabilitative programming. I ended up actually getting out of the job and ending up being able to take that rehabilitative course. After that course, I had to fight to get into a cognitive behavior program, something that I really needed. I had a disagreement with one of the lead people in the kitchen because of the way that they were treating us in the kitchen. And I ended up getting fired from that job. And of course, I got a write-up, but that was a blessing in disguise, because had I not done that, got fired, I wouldn't have been able to participate in the 6-month cognitive rehabilitative program that I really needed. That program gave me insight to who I was, why I committed my crimes. It showed me how to have remorse, and it showed me how I needed to reprogram my thinking. I needed to reprogram my thoughts in order to change who I wanted to be. After leaving that prison, I was sent somewhere else, put on another waiting list for work, and ended up getting another job that did not benefit me anything. But I wanted to continue my higher education. We had finally had on-site classes where we could, take college courses. And I wanted to go to work and take college courses, but I was not allowed to, because the college course was being held during the daytime. I couldn't get out of the courses. And one of the courses simply started 15 minutes before the end of my shift. And because it started 15 minutes before the end of my shift, I still was not allowed to leave my shift early and just go begin to take advantage of the rehabilitative course that I was looking forward to. There's plenty of times as this happened, and my story is not unique. It's something, that you'll see over and over. And this is why Prop 6 is essential and is important, because CDCR has the R on it for a reason. They get paid millions and millions of dollars just to ensure that access to rehabilitation is there and it's unimpeded. But when you have a system that is so ingrained with exploitation of labor, like ours is, it's difficult to, I guess, get beyond that. There is rehabilitation there. It's just there are so many barriers that are put in the way of rehabilitation. That's why when I came home, I dedicated the last 2 years of my life to fighting to develop policy with our legislative members that would remove barriers to rehabilitation, because I know what rehabilitation looks like. I know what a person that's not rehabilitated does to our society. I've been in there with the worst of the worst. And I don't want individuals who I've been in there with, that I've seen, that I've grown up with, that I've lived with 24 hours a day, to be in my society with my mother, my family, and my sisters and my brothers. So what is the result? What's the action? Is rehabilitation and removing any barriers that get in the way. And even if that means
CBS's Steve Hartman goes on the road
even
for a
if
story
that
about the
means
power of music.
getting
Unnoted
rid
attention.
of any barriers that actually exist and presents
It
themselves
was the
when
wow
incarcerated
that wowed the
individuals
world.
to
As we
get
first reported in
rehabilitation.
2019,
Is
the
Mr.
handling
Dave Clinton? He's kind of yes, I'm unmute you. Thank you. Rehabilitation is key, and it's imperative and it's important, and that's what Prop 6 does. Prop 6 doesn't eliminate the work program. When individuals are sentenced to be incarcerated, the sentence didn't say you were sentenced to a work in a concentration camp. In the sentence, you're doing your time. You're being estranged from your family. There's so much that you're going without, but just being pushed away from the fringes of society is not going to change anything. You have to rehabilitate someone. You have to restore them. People need to be educated. People need to be prepared with skills to actually succeed in this world. And with Prop 6, Prop 6 removes barriers that would do that. The biggest barrier to rehabilitation right now is the prioritizing of forced labor. The prioritizing of forced labor cannot be overlooked. It cannot be understated. Our history, Ipyani was going over the history. There's direct correlations. Slavery was supposed to be abolished. It never was abolished. It was just legally morphed from one form to another. When slavery was allegedly abolished the first time, guess what? It transformed to our chain gang. When society felt like the chain gang was no longer a social norm, it transitioned into our convict leasing. And once society felt like, okay, convict leasing wasn't right, it changed, it transformed into our carceral system. Anyone that's duly convicted of a crime now can be forced into involuntary servitude. And that's what created the over-policing of our communities to populate and contribute to mass incarceration.
I had to go to prison, and I was a single parent, and I didn't have a
it's very important that Prop 6 is passed. And I guess them are signs that maybe I'm too long-winded and I need to stop. But Prop 6 is important. It's rehabilitation over exploitation. Prop 6 won't cost anybody a penny. And before I leave, I'll just give you these numbers. Prop 6 instead could potentially save California taxpayers up to $500 million. People say, how can you do that? Well, simple studies from New York to Minnesota to Washington simply showed that small rehabilitative programs and access to them can decrease recidivism by 13%. If we take that and translate that to California, we send home 33,000 and 31,000 incarcerated individuals every year. 13% of that is close to 4,500 individuals. $132,000 a year times close to 4,500 individuals is close to $500 million a year in savings. And that's simply by just decreasing recidivism by 13%. Proposition is important. 6 is very important. It incentivizes people to actually work because it allows CDCR to add extra good time credits to take time off of people's sentence if they do decide they want to work. Work won't be abolished with Proposition 6. It would be transitioned into a voluntary work program versus a forced labor that's sustained by threat. And with that, I'll yield.
Definitely. Thank you, Lawrence. I appreciate you, brother, the work and the advocacy that you're doing throughout our state, but more importantly, for your story to give us a glimpse of who you are and your transformation. So thank you once again, brother. If we could go to the next slide, you'll see some ways where you can support Yes on Proposition 6. You could share with friends and family. You could attend an event. You can volunteer. You could share on social media. You could host a fundraiser or educational event, or you can donate. So if you scan that QR code and you have you would like to donate to Proposition 6, that would be beautiful. Next slide, please. And definitely ways to support, as I said, share with your friends and family, discuss and educate others about Proposition 6, the importance of voting yes. The yes vote means that we are prioritizing rehabilitation. We are getting away from the vestiges of slavery that are still staining the state of California. And we will be creating a more just system for all. Next slide, please. Thank you, sir. Attended event. There's going to be a number of events that are happening. For instance, one event that I'll be sharing with you guys in the near future is we're working on an action called End Slavery Sabbath, and it's more so focused on clergy and faith leaders because we see that those that ascribe to a belief value have a moral compass, right? Most that ascribe to a higher power or faith tradition have a moral compass, and they clearly see the ills of slavery, and it's like they see it, they recognize it, and many are working with us and many of other organizations to address this and remove this from the state constitution. Next slide, please. Volunteer opportunities. Like right now, we need there's a need for phone banking. And you could plug into the phone banking campaigns that are happening as well. And this is all done mobily. So you could phone bank simply from the comfort of your home and call for about 3 hours one day a week. And that makes a difference. Some might think, oh, only 3 hours. And I'm just like, no, those 3 hours and those people that you're contacting, you are educating them, you're letting them know the importance of voting yes on Prop 6. Next slide. Thank you, sir. Is donations, so once again, as we work towards the November election on November 5th, we live in we live in America and everything's built on capitalism. And the other side of the coin is very well funded. So we often rely on people power and the kindness of others to give to help sustain and build up and strengthen the work and the advocacy that we're doing. Next slide, please. Right here, an organization that is part of the coalition is Glide. They're currently doing phone banking as well as LSPC and All of Us or None. They also have a phone banking campaign going as well. But if you were to scan that QR code, you can go about learning how to register if you have an interest in phone banking. And I would just ask if you know of anyone that's interested or this issue touches them or affects them directly or have family members that are being forced to work right now as we speak, if they would like to make calls on behalf of Yes on Prop 6, that would be greatly appreciated and thoroughly needed as well. Next slide, please. And this slide is basically just showing and we could kind of go through this one, the next one, and the other one. These next three slides are basically a lot of the organizations that are helping support. So such as we have A New Way of Life. I know you guys might be familiar with Susan Burden, does amazing work. The ACLU is in support of this. Angela Davis, you got to definitely throw her name in the Anti-Recidivism Coalition. If we go to the next slide as well, you have the California Labor Federation, a huge entity, almost 1 million workers within that federation. And then if you look at the next slide, you'll see that A New Way of Life, Pride and Trust, March On, NorCal Resistance, Time Done, Alliance for Boys and Men of Color, the Glide Foundation, Indivisible, just a plethora of organizations see the importance of removing forced slavery in this California and removing involuntary servitude. And the next slide, thank you, sir. It's just another list of supporters. Interfaith Movement for Human Integrity is on there. Gotta shout us out to my executive director would shame me if I didn't, right? And then on the next slide, you'll see basically ways to engage and lock in. If you go to voteyesprop6.com, you'll find some toolkits there, resources there as well that you could plug in and share with your sphere of influence. And we all have a sphere of influence. So we're asking and hoping that you see the importance of this advocacy to remove involuntary servitude from the California State Constitution. And we're really asking with your help and assistance to do this. With that being said, if you want to endorse proposition, voting yes on Prop 6, you can click that link as well. And this slide presentation, I hope that we can email this out to everyone so they can click the links and anything that they're interested in. But with that being said, thank you for the opportunity to speak and share about the importance of voting yes on Proposition 6. And at this point in time, we can entertain any questions that you may have.
Great. Thank you so much for that. That was really enlightening, eye-opening. Let's see. I don't see any question. I have a question. I'd like to ask a question. Is Prop 6 similar? It seems to be a more narrower version of ACA 3 from a few years ago that Sidney Dove had introduced in the legislature. It died at the end of the 2022 session. It was really disappointing. I remember the visual of seeing her in front of the screen with all the votes, and the number of legislators that had abstained from the vote. And she was the bill would have proposed amending Section 6, Article 1 to eliminate the references for slavery or involuntary servitude. And even one of the early co-sponsors, Anthony Portantino, abstained from the final vote. So can you comment on that?
I'll defer to Brother Lawrence.
Yes, you are absolutely right. ACAA is a different version of ACA 3, and it was disheartening to a lot of my colleagues that was actually working on ACA 3 when Kamlager was championing the bill.
Mm-hmm.
With ACA 3, a lot of, I'm sad to say, but a lot of the issues had to do with language of wages, the fear of the increase of wages. So with ACAA, it was like intentional to make sure that we made clear that wage had nothing to do with this, that ACAA can do nothing to change who has the right to set wages for incarcerated individuals, and that ACAA did not attempt to secure any type of living wage or minimum wage for individuals who were incarcerated. It was more about fear mongering of having to pay money, which will cost billions of dollars. And then when it transitioned to ACAA and that language was left out to where now it transitioned to, oh, well, the prisons were shut down because no one would want to work, or it was all about money. So the difference, we had to make sure that when we prioritized the language, that we made sure that it was clear that wages had nothing to do with this. That's a whole nother fight. And you have organizations, and bills for that separate. And we made sure that we let people know from a perspective of impacted individuals that people want to work while incarcerated. So a lot of our advocacy efforts was a little different when it was ACA 3. We had to show that people wanted to work. It's just that allow people that autonomy they self, and don't force people to stay in a job that doesn't benefit them and also gets in the way of their rehabilitation. But ACA 3 was real disheartening. ACAA for sure. Even though the language was different, and we prioritized making sure that the language actually achieved the ending of the practice and not just symbolic like some of our other states throughout the United States have done, where they've changed the Constitution and it's still being practiced. We made sure that we had to call a companion bill, AB 628, if I'm not mistaken, that actually will recodify Penal Code 2700, which mandates that CDCR basically follow Article 1, Section 6. So we utilize this language to make sure that the practice changed in that people couldn't be punished for wanting to do volunteer work, and that we gave CDCR the power themselves to continue to incentivize working in a volunteer program by taking time off.
Great. Thank you so much. So it's encouraging to see that you brought it this far now to the prop level for giving the decision to the people rather than to the lawmakers. So, okay, I see we have Carol Francis. You have a question?
I'm wondering if you can talk about what people who, not the right wingers, but the people who are generally liberal but have concerns and might vote against this, what they're saying, because I really like the presentation with the history of the California slavery of the indigenous people, but it didn't get to the points that you, Brother Lawrence, were making, and that I think should be on the first slides. And that is the difference between enslavement, the difference between rehabilitation and getting revenge on people who've broken laws. It didn't get into how this would cut recidivism and how that would make the society better and save money for the country. And what are those things that people that you would expect to be our allies would say, and how do you counter those? And maybe put those in the beginning slides.
Thank you for that. Politics is tricky. I know we all know. Some of our most liberal individuals that had reservations, it's sad to say that it was readily recognizable that they knew that it was about time to end this practice. But because of the political pressure from our administration, the issues or the reasons to object, because there really shouldn't have been any, they were so minuscule to where they just start throwing up anything, and that really made sense. And some of the biggest concerns were made in, I'm not sure if any of you seen the Mercury News lately. This really like underscores how trivial it became, to where point they were saying, oh, well, no one will clean their cells, no one will do chores no more. It's like, okay, really serious? Chores, are we calling these? We're chores. Like we're children in the carceral system, and you're worried about ending the last remnants of vestiges of slavery, and you choose, so won't nobody do their chores? If we stop forcing people to provide jobs that provide CDCR profits, and I think that was one of the most minuscule and most trivial ways. But the other two that, of course, always resonates with the public, and especially with the Appropriations Committee, is that it's going to cost so much money to do so. It's going to cost untold, with ACA3, it was close to billions of dollars. This year, it kind of, since we changed the language, it was like untold millions. But appropriations, just like LAO, when they did Proposition 6, they did the analysis, they at least this time said that, you know, it's untold exactly how much it could cost. And at the same time, it's untold on how much it actually could save. No one actually was able to provide an actual fiscal analysis that had any concrete evidence. So it was always this undetermined number of amount of dollars that it would cost. And of course, in the fiscal issues that we're having this year, and probably will have the next couple of years, that's an immediate bill killer. So, ballooned or inflated alleged fiscal costs to taxpayers was one of their most heaviest, relied upon. A third one was the shutdown of the carceral system. No one will ever work again if we do this. And of course, that it was utilized as fear mongering, and at the same time, tied on the back end, to a whole nother fiscal. Oh, now this is how it will cost even more money because no one will work and we will have to hire, people to come run the prisons, et cetera, et cetera. And for people that are not versed in how the carceral system operates from a business or from a logistics standpoint, or either from just an impacted standpoint from those that are incarcerated, that can stick and be ingrained in people. And if that's not effectively cleared up, especially with people that have lived experience, and it can actually, give you the information that they won't give you, that can come pretty damaging to campaigns like this. Won't nobody come out in public and say, I still believe in slavery, or I think these people deserve to be slaves because they're convicted or they are incarcerated, etc. But they will always hide behind something else that has no standing that they feel can help subside. But I'll say this: it was more of political power. Our administration did not want this bill to get where it was going to get. A lot of people have just the slightest clue of what it took to get ACAA out of the legislation. A lot of people, it's set in the Rules Committee for close to 6 to 8 months, and they were trying to kill the bill. A lot of people have no clue because a lot of people don't be in the inner working of these things when it's going on. And they felt like we were going to give up, and we didn't give up. And we fought and we fought and we fought to the point to where we had to hijack a Democratic committee, executive committee conference. Of course, we weren't invited there, but we mobilized all of our people, and we went down there. We sat in these caucus, in committee meetings, Black Caucus, the Progressive Committee, Resolutions Committee, the Chicano Committee. We went down there and we pleaded why this bill needs to be let out so it can go through the legislative process. And we utilized our own political power and our own advocacy in the lobby of those hotels and within those meetings, and secured, we secured unanimous support by the executive Democratic Party. And that political pressure forced them to bring it out of the Rules Committee so it could go through the rest of the committees and make it through the legislative process. But Gavin Newsom did not want this bill to pass, and every turn he got, applied political pressure to his legislative body to put every roadblock in the way of getting this bill out of legislation. I know I'm sort of long-winded. I'm sorry for that. Hopefully I answered your question.
And then, I just want to point out real quick, because I know we're probably bumping up against some time barriers, but in our November ballot book, there's no one outwardly opposing yes on Proposition 6. So just wanted to note that.
Oh,
that's what I was going to point out too. That's encouraging. There is a statement I read in Cal Matters, though, that it was mostly Republicans that the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association supposedly is against it.
Thank you so much for your presentation. A real quick statement. I did this anger management group for years in Santa Cruz. It's for men. It's overcoming abusive behavior. We've actually gone into San Quentin with the group, which is beneficial. But I got 2 guys in my group right now that came out of the prison system, and they're both struggling with PTSD from the prison system. It's like, oh, wow, that's kind of shocked me. But my question is this: who gets all the money from the labor? And if the prison systems do go to voluntary labor, why can't some of that money go into a trust fund when the prisoners do get out, that they could tap into it? Because I'm a retired plumber and I paid into a 401k for 20-something years, that when I retire, which is coming up, I'm getting a healthy check just because of that. Why can't there be some sort of a match fund for prisoners when they're working, that money can be put into a trust fund where everybody's making money off the interest, and when the prisoners do get out, they have a chunk of money that they can get back and reestablish themselves in society? And that's my question.
and I'll defer to Lawrence, but I just want to chime in. Like that kind of thinking, that kind of innovative thinking is the kind of imagination and approaches that we need to be thinking, right? How we can better equip our community members that are returning to society to be able to be contributing members of society. And it's going to take those kind of questions, that kind of thinking, a whole reimagining of this system. But to answer your specific questions about who gets the money, in my mind, screams CDCR, but I'll defer to Brother Lawrence.
Yeah, you're right. Some of the money does go to CDCR, but some of the money also goes to other entities. So we are, I'm gonna say private contractors. We're contracted out, but to a certain degree, we are contracted out to the state. So a lot of the money actually goes to the state. When we're contracted out to the state, we make a lot of products for the state. We provide a lot of services to the state that saves the state money as well. But in turn, it hinders our local economies because those are jobs that can be given to individuals that are outside that can generate taxpayer dollars that can build those communities as well. But the majority of that money goes to the state, and some of it may go to other private enterprises. I'm not exactly sure which one does. I don't want to guess on that, but a good portion of that money goes to our state. You had a second question. The second question, I completely agree with you. I think that is one of the biggest issues and problems, the fact that there is nothing. You have people that sit there and they've worked 20, 30 years in that incarceral system. When they get out, they're up in age. There may be limited work that they can do, but guess what they get? They're given $200 and go about your way. There's no pension for them. There's no working compensation for them. There's nothing for them. So I agree. Why can't there be a system set up to where money is put away and people receive something when they get out? To me, it's just evident and clear that the prioritization over exploiting someone for cheap labor is their priority, is their goal, and it has never been about taking care or insulating that vulnerable population. Population of incarcerated individuals are looked on, by so many people as less than humane, like they deserve no dignity, forgetting that these are still our own community, not also remembering that these are our community members that are still coming back to our community. I think it's an excellent idea. It's not something I believe legislation wants because let's be real, it's too many people that will cry, well, why are we taking care of those who are committing crimes or who have harmed others? Why are we providing any means or anything to make it easy for them, etc., and not realizing the harm that we are doing not only to the individuals that are incarcerated, but eventually to our society as well. So.
Great. Okay, thank you. Rick.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for this presentation. It's been very enlightening. And one thing that I thought was really interesting was, and this kind of alludes to next week's program with Stephen Fisk, is an idea that was first in my consciousness with a gentleman named Dennis Kucinich, who talked about predatory capitalism. And I think that this is one of the aspects of it, because you have companies that are on the down low making money and reducing their in business, it's EBITDA, it's basically all the money that they make after they've paid all their bills, but they're reducing it by paying for less expensive labor. One thing that was very interesting about the American Friends Service Committee when it came to their advocacy of getting out of the support for companies that are making money in Palestine with military, military business is highlighting those companies. And they've done something very interesting called Investigate, which is showing you what companies are profiting, what mutual funds they might be on. So you can look at your 401k and take, and actually, send letters to those management companies and tell them you're going to be moving your 401k to another mutual fund. I think that might be something really good to take a look at. And one other quick question is that I think even though there aren't any avowed opponents of Prop 6, I'm sure that a lot of those companies are basically trying to make sure that there is no communication about Prop 6. So I think, being able to highlight those is really good. I saw Anthony just posted that Investigate actually does have something on prison in industrial complex and who's making money off of it. So that's in the chat.
Definitely. Thank you for those resources. I'm clicking on that link right now. The one thing that I definitely want to say, because I know we have about 7 minutes left for the Q&A section. So if we could keep the questions very focused, so we will try to hopefully be able to answer each one of the 4 hands that are left up. And Miss Maggie.
To make it short, I appreciate that. The mention of rehabilitation over work therapy as being so important. I was wondering what, in your personal experience, have been the most effective rehab programs for adjusting to being released and living a life that you like.
I for sure would say the most, maybe 2. Of course, being able to partake of my college courses to get closer to my degree was super helpful and super enlightening. Not only did it educate me, it increased the perspective and the lens that I was able to view the world and assess the world and analyze things and make my own decisions. It gave me capable tools to, continue to plot out my chart and my trajectory to success. It helped me be able to express myself. It helped me be able to understand others better because I had an open and enlightening understanding. But one of the biggest, I would have to say, probably for sure, was the cognitive behavior therapy program. Having that program was a godsend, and I had to fight to get into that program. But I'm glad that I did, because changing the way I thought was so important to me. Not important to me. It was so, at that moment, it wasn't important. Let me get the right language out. Changing the way I thought was imperative for me. It became very important that I did afterwards, because the thought process that I had then, and I wasn't the worst of the worst. I by any means, no stretch of imagination was I guilty. I mean, not guilty. I was guilty. In denial, yeah, but guilty. So my thought process, the way I view things, the victimization that I put upon myself because I had been subjected to this, it had to go. So I had to have a clear understanding, first, of who I was, accepting why I did what I did, accepting that I had other opportunities, but also realizing that you have to now reprogram the way that you think. You can't continue to think along the same sequence that you were thinking before. learning how to get rid of impulsiveness, and learning how much of a computer the brain is and how programmed it already was, and how I had to deprogram it and then reprogram it again. But not also learning that that's what I had to do, but how I had to do it and how I was going to do it, and then getting the practice at doing it, was some of the reasons why, that program was so very beneficial to me. Just simple having access to mental health programs too also did a whole lot for me. A lot of people, I think it's 2024, some people are still just so clueless to what mental health is, and a lot of people don't understand that mental health is simply signs of unhealthy brain. Just like you have kidney failure, that's signs, or you have diabetes, a sign of unhealthy kidneys. When you have, high blood pressure or hypertension, that's a sign of an unhealthy heart. That's just like mental health is the sign of another unhealthy organ, which is your brain. And so long we have had this, this negative connotation on mental health, to where it's not talked about, it's not looked at, it's not frowned upon, but these things are still real, and these issues still contribute to a lot of things in our life. So, having access to mental health programs and being able to finally understand what mental health was, removing that stigma and realizing that, hey, everybody deals with mental health issues, and it's okay to talk about them and understand them. Like, I dealt with depression and anxiety sometimes while I was in there, especially the anxiety. I had no clue what it was, but I was dealing with it. And when you're dealing with something and it rapidly comes upon you and you don't know, that causes panic, and that triggered down to panic attacks. So having access to mental health was key to me to understand, okay, what's going on with my body? What's going on with my mind? To kind of, okay, this is what you need to do. These are some of the practices to mitigate, some of the things that you are feeling. These are some of the practices to help mitigate some of the things you are thinking. And, so mental health as well it was a great rehabilitative tool that I for sure, appreciate.
Thank you. We have 2 more questions left. If we can just ask, we got Rose and Anthony, both could ask your question, and then our speakers can address both questions.
Bill's got his hand up as well.
He put his down. I saw it. He put it.
No, it's still there.
Is it still up? I thought.
Anyway, mine is not so much a question as just like a quick comment.
Okay.
I'm very involved with a lot of homeless people, and a large percentage of them have come out of incarceration at different times. And I think your next project, once you get this one through, is to make sure that $200 is increased dramatically, that what somebody else suggested, that the money that is spent in the prison.
Rose,
sorry, I'll be quick. That the money that they earn in the prison is put into a fund for them when they leave, and that they're given a lot more support. Okay, that's all I can say. I had more, but that's enough.
Ipyani, I'm so grateful. You're still working. We're still here doing it.
Amen.
Yeah, activating. Doc Ruby on the board, getting ready to change her name, not change her name, but I'm adding my father's name, who was Lavender, which was also the Native Americans, which were what we know. But anyway, I just wanted to say, thank you again. You've answered most of my questions, and I think the social re-education and self-esteem is really important as a program, inside and out. Even if there's a way to not just take the visual on the cameras, but even daytime trips or something. But this is important to let them know they're capable and worthy.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you. That's well said. Well said.
Okay, great.
Man.
So we have, I see Shazad did want to say something in the chat. So now we have Anthony, Philway, and Shazad. Anthony, do you have a quick question?
Well, yeah, just for a reference here, I checked it out.
Recording in progress.
People who are working in prison earn between 16 cents and 74 cents per hour. And about half of that money has to be returned for what they call victim restitution and administrative costs. So it's really much less. And when they did try to raise this amount, they cut the hours of inmates so that they wouldn't be earning more than they earn for the present time. My question, and I don't think you could answer it now, is I'd love to see the statistics on how profitable it is to the prisons and to the private companies to be able to get access to labor at that level of cost. I mean, there must be hundreds of millions of dollars that are being basically given to the state and to private companies by inmates. And I think having those statistics would be really helpful to see how exploitative this system is.
Definitely, you are totally correct about that. And just off the top of my head, just thinking like, say like for someone that's welding on the inside, I believe like the average start for like people getting off starting welding is like in the high 30s, if not low 40s, right? So imagine paying someone $1 and they worked their 8-hour shift and they only made like $8. But in turn, they would have to pay that person that really was in that profession over 200 something dollars, right? So it's going to be a huge chasm in between what the people that are held within are being forced and what they're being paid, and that huge chasm is going into the state's pockets, going into the company's pockets. They know what they're doing, and they they don't care if it's exploitive. They care that it's profitable. But we definitely will definitely because I met you, I actually met you and your wife before when you guys were being recognized for your housing program and the zoning of the churches and everything. We've spoken a few times, and good to see you again. I'm
It's
happy
good
to see you.
And Friends Committee on Legislation in California has really taken up this issue. And we're very, very strongly supporting, what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks, Anthony. Okay, so folks, we are running over time now. So we still have Phil and Shazad. We only reserve for participants, we only reserve this time for a quick question or comment. So keep that in mind. After Phil, I'll have Phil go first and then Shazad.
Thank you. I have a issue in my head, and I'd like to hear you comment on it. I think work in the prisons obviously needs to be voluntary and it needs to be compensated appropriately. But one of the things that I'm thinking about is how can we integrate rehabilitation and work and survival outside into a single package. I think they are all necessary as part of the rehab process. Anyway, we comment on that.
I'll take a stab at it. And I think as Brother Lawrence kind of shared, where he wasn't able to leave his work assignment 15 minutes early to access the courses that he was seeking to pursue to better himself, right? So I think it could be, I believe one of the ways that we can address it is through scheduling, right? Showing how the college courses were going through the day. Well, why isn't that we can't have a night school like we often have in our real society for those that have to work in the day and then are pursuing their education by night? Why can't we have the scheduling where, hey, someone works their assignment and then later on that evening they have opportunity to pursue the classes that they desire to better oneself? So that's just a simple answer right there. But it's probably many of ways that we can think about how to reimagine and make it more efficient and make it more true focus on rehabilitation to really actually be bettering people. And then ultimately, I want us to also think, how can we prevent people going into the system? Thank you, Miss Rebecca. How can we prevent people going into this system? Why is it that we have people have to go to prison to access programming and mental health service? Why can't we have these things readily available in our community from the onset, where we can plug in, learn a skill set. Why is it that we have to force people, or why do we have to use incarceration as a rehabilitative tool when people can be empowered on the outside, people can be invested to on the outside, where we don't even have to think about, people don't even have to think about having to do desperate things to feed their family that may lead them in incarceration.
Thank you very much, Ipyani, and thank you very much for presenting. This was great. Lawrence, thank you very much for coming on board as well. This is very powerful, and when this gets posted on the website, we're going to be able to add all that information in, including, with your permission, we can do the slideshow and all that kind of stuff. So, folks, thank you very, very much for joining us this morning. Lawrence, Ipyani, thank you very much. This was great. Lawrence, we need to keep in touch as well. And please join us next week with, we have a talk from Stephen Fisk, one of our board members. Please consider getting the, as this gets edited and as the video gets out, by all means, send it out to your friends, because it's a very important proposition that a lot of people don't have no information on. All right, folks, thank you very, very much, and we will see you next week.